an historic moment. Amen? And I'm afraid that the warfare is only intensifying, and the serpent is at war with the seed of the woman.
That struggle focuses on the question of abortion. Now, obviously, we are aware that this issue, as it is being debated in the courtrooms, on the streets, with protests on both sides of the issue, that this issue is one that is highly charged with passion and emotion, and the words of debate become increasingly more strident. But that's because we realize that so much is at stake in it.
As you may know, the North Carolina legislature reapproved a bill that would ban abortions after 12 weeks of pregnancy, overriding the veto of the Democratic governor.
With 72 having voted in the affirmative and 48 in the negative, the motion carries. Having passed by the requisite 3/5 vote, the House has overridden the governor's veto and the bill becomes law, notwithstanding the governor's objections. So be notified.
If you really love that which is good, you must hate that which is evil. For example, someone says, I love babies. Oh, I love children. I love babies. Well, do you hate abortion? No. It's a logical contradiction. It is a logical contradiction. Of course, they don't teach logic anymore in schools. They say, well, you just don't understand the things about abortion. And you've never watched little babies squirming around in a trash can either, have you? In abortion clinics. And you've never seen them pulled out by their feet and then having, before their body is fully brought out of the womb, because you can't kill them afterwards because that would be murder. So while part of their body is still in the womb, you jam forceps up into their brain and kill them. Then you can pull them out, throw them in the trash can with all the others and let them wiggle around and cry. You say that doesn't go on every day. And why? Because men love money. All you free thinkers out there, we're so happy about how intellectual you are because you understand so much more than all those stupid Christians. You haven't even begun to think.
This bill is similar to the one that was passed in Texas last year, which bans abortions after 6 weeks and allows private citizens to sue anyone who helps a woman get an abortion. These bills are part of a larger effort by anti-abortion activists to challenge Roe v. Wade, the landmark Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion nationwide in 1973. They hope that the conservative majority on the court will overturn or weaken Roe and allow states to restrict or ban abortion as they see fit.
And I want to say, before we begin to look more closely at the actual issues of the abortion controversy, that whatever side of the issue you are on, if you're pro-abortion, if you're pro-choice, if you're pro-life, whatever you call yourself, whatever label you wear, I think that it's necessary for all of us to realize that this issue is extremely complex.
As a mother, as a physician, and as a legislator, I am proud to support Senate Bill 20.
Women did not ask for your oversight. We didn't ask for your approval. We didn't ask for your supervision. It's our fundamental right to make decisions about our own bodies and our own health care, and this bill is a violation of those rights.
Is a woman's right to her own body, and this is the crucial point, is it an absolute right? Is it an unlimited right? Or are there other principles and rights that impose limits and restraints upon whatever right we have to our own bodies? From a biblical theological society, we know, for example, that in Old Testament Israel, in the legislation that God gave to his people, he prohibited self-mutilation of the human body, of both male and female. But I do not have the right of my own body to use my body as a weapon to injure your body. That's one restraint on the rights of my body. I can't use it to harm you. But then there's one other question with this repeated position that I think is important. And that is one that goes on every day. The debate is the unborn child, technically speaking, really a part of the mother's body? It's obvious, isn't it, that in a normal pregnancy, the unborn child is in the mother's body. So that here we have a woman who has something going on inside of her. Now, there's no dispute that embryo, fetus, whatever you want to call it, that baby that is developing in there is inside of that woman's body. But is it part of her body simply because it's located within her? We've already demonstrated that fetus, baby, or embryo, whatever you want to call it, has its own distinct and peculiar genetic structure and makeup. If you take a tissue sample from an unborn child and examine its genetic structure, its genetic fingerprint will not match the fingerprint of the mother, because it carries the genetic code both of the mother and of the father. And what is growing in there from a biomedical perspective is not part of the woman's body.
I believe that in some ways we are losing ground on this issue. We have fallen for a trap. And the trap is that this issue is all about personal stories. And if we can just come up with compelling personal stories, then we can just win the argument. It's got to be about more than that. If for no other reason, then we are people of the book. We are people of the gospel. It is not about my personal story. Now, I want you to listen to this woman's line of reasoning. Here's the complicated reality in which we live. All life is not equal. That's a difficult thing for liberals like me to talk about, lest we wind up looking like death panel loving, kill your grandma and your precious baby stormtroopers. Yet a fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. She's the boss. Her life and what is right for her circumstances and her health should automatically trump the rights of the non-autonomous entity inside of her. Always. When we on the pro-choice side get cagey around the life question, it makes us illogically contradictory. When we try to act like a pregnancy doesn't involve human life, we wind up drawing stupid semantic lines in the sand. First trimester abortions versus second trimester versus late term, dancing around the issue, trying to decide if there's a single magic moment when a fetus becomes a person. Are you human only when you're born? Only when you're viable outside of the womb? Are you less of a human life when you look like a tadpole than when you can suck on your thumbs? The majority of women who have abortions, 1 in 3 American women are already mothers. And I can say anecdotally that I'm a mom who loved the lives she incubated from the moment she peed on those sticks, and is also now well over 40 and in an experimental drug trial. If by some random fluke I learned today I was pregnant, you bet your ass I'd have an abortion. I'd have the world's greatest abortion. That's brazen. Basically, she's saying some human lives need to be sacrificed if they stand in the way of other human lives. Let me ask you something. Where's your personal anecdote for her? Folks, abortion is spiritual warfare. What we just read from this woman, this is spiritual warfare. That's evil. to be that flippant about the taking of life. I wouldn't just have an abortion, I have the world's greatest abortion. She's talking about killing somebody. So what is our message to the culture at large? That Christ, through his incarnation, vindicates, validates, and verifies the sanctity of human life at every point, from conception to natural death. Folks, he could have come to this world in any way, shape, form, fashion he chose. God chose conception and every step of the birth process, thus validating, verifying the sanctity of human life while it's in the womb, all the way to the end of life, where God the Son experiences death, thus validating and sanctifying even that part of our experience. But here's the other thing. He also validates and sanctifies human suffering. So from conception, we know that life is sacred and set apart because God has told us so through having his Son, the second person of the Trinity, go through every phase of that process. Death as a part of human life. He experiences it, and suffering prior to death. So that whether we're talking about protecting babies in the womb or protecting people when they're weak and frail at the end of their lives from being cut off from the suffering that Christ validated, it's all the same theological principle. We read there in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, when I came to you, I determined to know nothing among you save Jesus Christ and him crucified. He goes on later in verse 5 to explain himself. Why? So that your faith might not rest on man's wisdom, but on God's power. I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God unto salvation. The gospel is the power of God, not my compelling story. We preach Christ and him crucified. We have a biblical theological understanding of the sanctity of life. That's what we preach.